been a while. I walked across the street and upstairs and I thought, holy smokes, where'd you guys go? So what a wonderful facility. But I would like to talk today about the proposed Reno wastewater tax that's probably going to be coming up on their agenda around the May timeframe. There's a handout. I'm not going to regurgitate everything in that handout, but basically it's a tax for wastewater management. And the basic purpose of government, number one, is to provide security and safety. Number two, it's to provide services. That's why we pay general fund tax dollars. We also have a flood authority for which we pay sales tax. We also have TUMWA, the water authority, who we entrust for having clean and adequate water. And we pay residentially approximately $500 a year to the sewer fees. And those fees can include wastewater management. Now, the Washoe County School District Legal Counsel has opined that this is an illegal tax. It's not a fee, it's a tax. I included that in your handout so that you can read it. I'm not going to regurgitate it. But one thing I'd like to ask, if Reno was going to pursue this, which they shouldn't, and I have so much respect for the city of Reno and so much respect for Mayor RSCVA and all she does, it's just that this particular issue is a bad idea. But if we're going to go forward and try and do it, why don't we get an attorney general opinion? Because this would set a precedent across the state. So there's nothing wrong if you're going to pursue it and getting an attorney general opinion on that. Again, it's in your handout for you to read. That's basically all I have to say today, except in the future, I hope to come back to this wonderful facility. I would love to talk to you for a few minutes about the future of education, the violence, unfortunately, that's plaguing the school district. At-risk kids, something near and dear to my heart about how we can deal with at-risk kids. And we have kids in the school district that have never seen the ocean. They've never seen Lake Tahoe. They've never seen a ranch. And so I'd just love to go on and on about how we can incorporate nonprofits and local businesses in that. I do want to talk in some future time about the RTC gas tax. I spoke at County Commission the other day. That's why it's 50 cents cheaper in Carson City than here. Goes up every July 1 and never ends. And I do want to talk about kind of an elephant in the room too, is the 501c6 lobbying funds where taxpayer dollars are used for that. I haven't confirmed it, but I believe that the Attorney General is going to be looking to do an opinion on that about what tax dollars can do for lobbying activities. So 30 seconds left, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. Any further public comment?
Not at this time.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment? Okay, I'll go ahead and close that item. Before we move into consent agenda, just wanted to open up the meeting with a couple of comments from the chair. Thank you all for being here and bringing the icy roads to get here. We apologize, we're a few minutes late, but obviously we were slower going to get here and to get here safely this morning. So I appreciate that. Really what I wanted to just start the meeting off with, looking as we go into this second meeting of the new year, kind of a focus that I'd like to see is really teamwork. And Mr. Squaga and Charles and I were at a board training that Charles will touch on later for DMO boards, and met people from all over the country, from Alaska to the East Coast to just everywhere at this amazing training that really talked about how issues that they have, and they do all over. Some have some incredible, crazy stories to share with us, but really the best practices and how we as an organization and we as a board specifically, it was a training for boards. You know, how do we get better at what we do? I think a lot of that, from my perspective, is teamwork. Having been a former athlete and being raised, family of 6 kids, kind of teamwork is something that really is important, to feel like we're all on the same team, whether it's those of us sitting here on the board, especially, but all of our staff, our support, the community, that we're working on a team, we're all rowing in the same direction, and that we work together and support each other, and do it in a positive manner. I mean, those of you who know me, I'm the ultimate optimist. Even in the worst of times, I'm always looking for a silver lining. And I think that that's important as whatever decisions we're making, and as we work together as a board. I talked about kindness last month. So it's positivity. We got to spread positivity. We got, again, be kind to each other. to be respectful and to do whatever we can in a world that's just really, I think, very tough and been very tough on all of our emotional and psychological health of our country, of our community, of our families, to really kind of see if we can shift that. And I think we can. So positivity, kind of staying as positive as we can. And then I have just a quote that I think really talks about teamwork that I think is really my goal as chair and as leading this organization, not just the board, but the organization as a whole and every employee in it, as well as our community. Teamwork is the ability to work together toward a common vision, the ability to direct individual accomplishments towards organizational objectives. It is the fuel that allows common people to attain uncommon results. And that was Andrew Carnegie, who I think obviously was probably a master of that. So enough of me going on. I'm going to go ahead and move on to item C, which is our consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I'm sure I have a one change on the
Okay.
minutes of January 26th. On page 5, on the motion about the meeting schedule, I believe it was inadvertently put under absent members Bybee, Chapman, and Silver under absent as opposed to nay. I believe we voted those were nay. I think it's the meetings show us as absent. So I think that was just
Okay, thank you for that correction.
With that, I will move with that correction to move approval of the consent.
Okay, thank you for catching that, Mr. Chapman. So with the corrections to the minutes of our last meeting, I have a motion on the floor for Mr. Chapman. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from member Keel. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to item D, D1, executive update. Charles, floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wait 1 sec for Mike to get us set up here. Sorry, that thing. Really, my presentation.
We need music. Anybody do the Jeopardy thing?
All right. Good morning, everyone. As I start today's presentation, I'm going to start with something that I don't normally do, and that's really referring back to our mission, vision, and values. This is in no way in coordination with what the chair just talked about, but one of the things that I brought back from this convention that we went to, and I'll talk about it more in detail, was the fact of including and recognizing some of the team members that are part of this organization that don't always get visibility to the board, that I just wanted to be able to recognize and just talk about for a quick second. So first of all, I just want to recognize Lisa Farmer. Sorry, Lisa. Lisa does a whole lot of work for us behind the scenes, which is really important, from not only the notes, everything with the board, but keeping me straight, chasing all the board members down for pre-board meetings, helping us with staff meetings, making sure breakfast is here, and a heck of a lot more. And I'm only as good as Lisa helps me. So the one thing that I would ask that you say is make sure you wish her happy birthday. It was her birthday earlier this week. So that when you do check out by the end of the day, she would appreciate that as she had a birthday. Mike, if you can come out from behind the scenes, I want to also recognize Mike Morley. Mike is part of our dynamic duo on the tech side. Mike got up at 6:50 this morning to get here on time to make sure that we were all set today. Helped spend a couple hours yesterday just making sure everything from the technology set up, because we're Zooming and we have video. Mike and Chris do a phenomenal job upgrading the things that we have. I really appreciate everything you do, Mike. So thank you for everything you do. If I can get Andy Fox to stand up, Andy on our marketing side, Andy puts together every single video, social, really a key component to everything we do in marketing. And all the great video content that we create is because Andy works really hard to make us look really good. So Andy, thank you for doing what you do. Daniel, would you stand up for a second? And Daniel was actually shocked when I asked him to join the meeting this morning. Daniel is really a key factor on our sales team. He makes everything go. And if you get past the boxes that are in his office, he helped lead the yoga stuff for our customer advisory board. He makes sure everybody in sales shines. And Daniel, we just really appreciate everything you do and glad that you're in here for today's meeting. So thank you. One of the gentlemen that's not in here that most of you know and you see, but probably came in a little late due to the snow is Robert Douglas. And Robert does a yeoman's job, not only with everything with the tax collections and the numbers, but I'm talking to him 2 to 3 times a day to make sure that helps put these types of presentations together. And Robert really helps Courtney and the entire team. There's a lot more people than what I'm going to mention today, but these are folks that are important. And the last one that I want to talk about very briefly, and he's hiding, is Ben McDonald, who's hiding in the corner over here. Ben, if you would stand up for a second. Ben was recently promoted to oversee all the public affairs stuff that we do. But Ben and Celeste, dynamic duo in terms of the public relations and everything that we turn out. There was a release that you guys got yesterday. The week he adapts to anything that I throw at him. The man never says no to anything. From the newsletters that are almost no. But anything that happens, really appreciate everything you do. So thank you, Ben. That is really part of the values that we have, right? It's the people that help make us go. And what you do is you always see folks like Mike and Christina, Art, who's going to present, Courtney, and can't do without them. The CEO reports that you all see and get, the 18 pages, because of all these folks, Trent, that put together all that information that is really making sure that we're collaborating and we're transparent. But there's a lot more people that help make those things go. There's 3 people that are not here that I just want to recognize from the facilities. Adam Villa from the RSCC does a yeoman's job to helping making sure everything that we have work. Jack Nicholson over at the RSLEC also, as well as Zach Stodinger from the NBS and the REC. So there's a lot of folks, there's 120 of us that make things go. And I just wanted to take a moment to recognize the people, because it's the people that help make us really succeed. So thanks for hearing that. I'm going to go into some detail today and happy to take questions when we're done. What I'm going to start off with is a release that was sent out that was covered extensively, really, by the local press. And that is, in calendar year 2022, we set a record for room tax collections. And it was a significant record. It's great to see the work and the visibility on the local level as we work to educate folks here about the impact that's made through the efforts of the organization and certainly from our hotel partners that helps make everything go. In order for you guys to have a great or a better understanding, kind of like on a year by year, I want to go through where we were and where we are today in terms of room tax collections. This is going to be based on calendar year, not fiscal year. So in 2016, more than 332 million collected in room tax revenues. 2017, that jumped to 373 million. And in 18, we got to 394. 2019 is the first time we got over 400 million. We got to $403 million in room tax collections. And as we all know, we got to 2020 and we took a little bit of a dive. I would say a lot of a dive due to COVID. And then in 2021, we came back and set a record. And then this last year, the calendar year, we got to 467. Now that's the largest increase year over year from 16, if you don't include COVID. So we went up by $47 million in room tax collections in the calendar year. So that's phenomenal work by everyone to help make us successful, but there's a lot more that goes into this. And so what I want to do is I want to look at the room tax collections by month last year. And if you can see on the left-hand side, it talks about what the new monthly record that was set in 2022 and the previous record right next to it. So there's records that go back to 18, in September of 18. But again, there were 9 different times in the calendar year that we set a record. And part of the reason why we do that is we look at seasonality, right? It's not fair to compare people visiting here in July with January. It's a little bit different. But we want to look at month over month and year over year what we're doing. And what I did is I highlighted 4 months at the bottom. Those 4 months are the current fiscal year. And so 4 of the first 6 months this year, we set records in terms of collections. Now, if we look at the all-time, the top 5 all-time have happened in 21 and 22. 3 of those top all 5 months happened in this last calendar year. So again, really good news. What's happening? One of the board members during the pre-board meeting, I think it was Mr. Squaga, that asked, hey, how was January? How'd you guys do in January? So this is not official. We had one hotel that kind of misfiled, and so we have to go through this with the one adjustment, but this is like 99% set for the month of January. In January, we set another record. So 5 out of 7 months of the current fiscal year has been a record in room tax collections at 29,174,000 in January. Ms. Chair, I hope I'm being positive enough with kind of the results we're talking about. So
I love it. It's money. It's positive. It's great.
now that topped the previous record back in 2019 of 28,502. So a little bit, about $600,000 more. From a budget standpoint, we budgeted 25,232. So again, we were a little bit conservative on the budget, but we were able to exceed that and keep our record-setting revenues going. Now, the ADR from last January to this January is flat. So that's going to be important as we talk about a trend that we're looking at moving forward. So that the ADRs have been going up. It was flat, really year over year, maybe a 1% increase. We're waiting for that adjustment. The ADR for this last January is 135 and change versus 133 January of 22. And that includes, that's all in with everybody in. The cash rooms, however, were up more than 8,600 cash rooms of hotels. Hotels only were up over 8,600. The motels were down 6,500. So that's interesting in terms of a shift of population where they're staying and what they're paying. But overall, we were up over 5,000 room nights year over year, January to January, as we make that comparison. So a couple of things. I want to just highlight those 4 things and talk about that very briefly, because 1 month doesn't make a trend, but we're taking a look at some things that are going on. Good morning, Ms. Silver. So we're looking at a possible shift. And what we're looking at here is from ADR that was flat year over year. What we have to see is ADR has gone up exponentially for the last year and a half, and the hotels have done a phenomenal job in terms of yielding. That helps set some of those record revenues, but that has also started to level off. Again, we're not going to most likely see those increases that we've seen as we start to flatten a little bit. The second thing is when we look at the comparison of overall hotels up and coming through, we're also looking at increase in hotel room nights. So ADR is staying flat, while hotel room nights on the cash are going up. Also a really good sign as well. So what does that mean? That means is with the motel rooms down and the hotels up, the question is, are we seeing a different type of visitor? And that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at moving forward. That are we yielding better? Is there a shift due to the marketing or what the hotels are doing? That's one of the things that we're looking at specifically for moving forward. And so again, the numbers help guide us in terms of what's there. But again, 5 of the 7 months in this fiscal year have been records. I want to move on to, yes.
Do the hotels report when they have rooms off the market or no?
They do not report the rooms off the market to my knowledge. Is that correct, Courtney?
They report available.
Available rooms. Yeah.
Okay. And did you see a shift in available year on year?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I was actually hoping to have Robert in here so he could, because he's my guru in that, but I'll get back to you on that. I'll check and get back to you on that. But I think it's a really important note to say, hey, we're up in overall hotel rooms. Actually, up at the lake, it was down in terms of what it yielded. So actually, more people coming through at a higher rate actually makes us exactly where we want to be.
That available rooms can shift,
Absolutely. And again, that's why I look at year over year and also what each hotel is doing in terms of improvements.
Right.
Absolutely matters.
Charles, Mr. Murdoch?
So that's for 1 month. What's the snapshot that for the whole year?
Snapshot for the whole year.
I'm talking room nights, cash rooms, etc.
All that stuff is in the CEO report, which I put together. What I looked at is I looked at month over month, kind of where we're at. So what I did, Rick, is I went back and I looked at total rooms. If you hang in there with me, you look at total rooms from August through January, we're off about 5,000 rooms, August through January. So we're at 99.6% of where we were a year ago. Okay.
And comparable to, like, do you compare these to 19 as well?
We look at, we're at the point now post-COVID that we're going back year over year. So I'm looking at 22 compared, or 21 compared to 22. We are off about 25,000 rooms because there was a delta in July. We were off 20,000 and Mr. Quagg and I were talking about it. We're not sure why that delta over the summer. There wasn't the fires that we had previously. But if you look at from August till now, we're 99.6% overall. We're 98.3% last year to this year, kind of where we're at. But if you want 19, I can go back and.
Well, I'm just saying that was pre-COVID, totally pre-COVID, just to see that. Are we getting back to exactly where we were when we were at the height?
Yeah. I would say we're trending right. The revenues are absolutely there. And to see that we're up in hotel rooms in January is great. And that trend is we're right on par since August. So that's something absolutely that we're looking at. Network drop off. We had a network drop off, so we're gonna sit here and stall for a second. Any other questions?
Well, no, it's not more an observation. I was surprised that we were up in January, the weather, that the weekends lost, including carrying into February, but I mean, really starting in December through, I'd say we've lost the majority of the weekend if you were to start lining.
There was a lot of snow and 80 was closed. It certainly impacted. So to see that the overall hotels were up, it's a really encouraging sign. To me, it's also encouraging that we're getting a different type of visitor based upon where people are booking. And I think that also has an impact as well. So very encouraged by that trend. Did I say that Mike got up at 6:50 this morning?
I left at 6:50.
Oh, he left at 6:50, sorry. I swear we rehearsed this the day before and everything goes well and.
Charles, what was that percentage increase? You didn't know off the top of your head in January, that year over year?
The year over year, are you talking dollars or?
Percentage increase for either rooms or dollars?
It's 5,000 rooms year over year increase of where we're at, but again, we're missing that one hotel. We'll probably go up just a little bit more than that. It's a $25 million budget to finish at 29 versus 28, which was the previous record.
Hey, Charles, just one more quick question.
Yeah.
When we say motels, are we saying like flight prop, the Marriott, or is that falling into?
I'm going to defer to Courtney on the definition.
Finish on that.
Yeah, so. Helping keep the lower. Not that.
They fall in the motel category? And they were down.
They were down. They were down 6,800 rooms. Okay, we're back in there. Yeah, I'm gonna get rid of this screen here. That would be great.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Mr. Murdoch.
You know, this is great, Andy. This showed me this report, great report. I don't know why I didn't see this, but interestingly, you go by the zones, the suburban, Reno, downtown Reno, and 1 mile radius. Looks like who's up 16.1%? 1 mile radius of downtown Reno is up 16.5% in rooms, and downtown is up 0.3%, and the suburban is up 4%. That's interesting. You're up that much, and then you're up incline is up 15.5. Thank you, Andy. Go Andy. Interesting. This is yeah.
Well, and again, that helps us guide, and we're looking for those trends factors so that we can adjust potentially what we're marketing, how we're marketing, and those types of messages. So again, we're always doing a deep dive into those numbers to see where we're at. I do want to call out, we're going to talk about bowling a little bit this morning, and I want to focus on that. As most of you know, we were fortunate to work with USBC on an opportunity to move the women's championships in 2024. They were in Cincinnati. They're coming here next year, and we were able to sign that without trading or giving up anything. So this is an incremental piece of business. That's great. And Chad and Jason over at USBC that often watch our stuff. Thank you for your partnership and your trust in us to be able to do that. We're really excited to be able to bring the women back here a year from now. One of the things that we want to talk about is Bowling Day in the USA. Bowling Day in the USA took place on February 11th. And what we did is we opened up the bowling stadium, the National Bowling Stadium, to the public, to the local public. And I want to talk a little bit about that. Here you see all the lanes being used in the bowling stadium. And we went through a publicity campaign locally, our social, our PR, to help drive that experience. Here you see UNR students in Kingpin using the facility as well. So we opened up all the lanes. We had Kingpin open. We had kids that were there. And again, we used a whole lot of different methods to talk about that, where kids got in free. There was a donation to be able to go to charity to make this work. And I know Mayor Sheeby talked about, hey, let's get that open. And certainly we were able to celebrate this by doing something special. And I want to talk about basically a brief summary about what took place. We had almost 400 bowlers, 368 that came through. We had children that came in for free. We had UNR students that were bowling in Kingpin. And just as important from a community standpoint, we raised $1,500 that was given to Special Olympics of Nevada from our effort. We certainly didn't benefit from any of that. And there were a couple barrels of food collected by donations of people coming to the event itself in order to make that impact and give back to the community. So instead of really me talking about it, here's a quick video that showcases what happened that day.
Stadium opened its doors to the public today to celebrate Bowling Day. It was just $5 and anyone under the age of 18 all got in for free. Plus, the first 200 guests will also receive a pair of limited edition NBS socks. The doors were open to everyone up until 4:30. So hopefully you got to experience bowling at the National Olympic Stadium on Bowling Day.
And thank you, Andy Fox and marketing team, for helping put that together, that recap. Appreciate that moving forward. Continuing with bowling, certainly the 2023 Open is around the corner. Hopefully all of you received the email from Lisa inviting the board of directors to the VIP opening here in early March. Bowling registration has been going phenomenal. And here's a preview of what's to come here next month. We're expecting nearly 50,000 bowlers to be here. Approximately 10,000 teams coming through, and it's the largest open championship here since 2013. That's 10 years. So it was here in 13, 14, 16, and now back in 23. So that's great news. The expected economic impact from bowling itself, Rick, you'll be really happy to hear this, $73 million plus. So it's a great event. All the hotels we expect to benefit, thanks to the partnership from the row downtown, and certainly we're really excited to welcome folks here starting next month. In conjunction with that, we've partnered with the downtown partnership folks to offer this Reno Discovery Guide. And this Discovery Guide includes more than 50 businesses that have participated. It includes the Riverwalk and downtown businesses. They are putting together discounts for local businesses and highlights activities in and around the area. It's easy access from the hotel and the NBS, and every single bowler is going to be getting one of these discount guides. Now, one of the things that marketing folks tell us is that Christina says that we're going to be looking to do this for more events, more large events that are coming through. So this is a great trial. It's in partnership with the downtown partnership folks, and it's a great way for the bowlers to experience the area while they're here. The legislature obviously is open, and the travel and tourism day down the legislature recently took place. I was fortunate enough this time to be able to go down there and meet with legislators. The lieutenant governor I was able to meet with, and I've invited him to come up and spend some time with us to experience what Reno Tahoe is doing now that he's new. Ben McDonald and I also had the opportunity to go to the assembly and sit in the assembly where we were recognized. That's the little certificates that I expect Ben to have hanging in his office. And it was just a great opportunity with all of our partners from the region that we're able to meet and to talk about what's happening in the assembly during the year. Recapping, this happened after our last board meeting. So National Plan Your Vacation Day is an initiative that is run by US Travel, and it encourages people all over the country to plan their vacation for the entire year. And what you have there on this page is this is a sample of social media graphics that US Travel pushes out. They do stuff that's really simple, right? They say, post this on your social, create some messaging that's there. They want to just get that word out. And one of the things that I wanted to do is to encourage our team to go beyond what is done in this. And this is sample messages. So it's really turnkey for any destination, whether you're a destination like Andy's or a destination like ours or down in Las Vegas, where you can take advantage to help promote travel and tourism on a national level. And that happens the last Tuesday in January of every single year. But we wanted to do something different. So we took that and we created a brand new idea, and that was create a National Vacation Day contest that we initiated for the very first time this year. And what we did is we partnered with the Reno Tahoe Airport. We also partnered with the Chamber of Commerce, thank you, Ms. Silver, to enter to win trip tickets to be able to do that, to encourage people to plan your vacation. And part of that was, how do we differentiate ourselves from every other destination in the country versus just sticking up something on your social and being passive, to galvanizing support locally to help drive that experience and help us break through as a destination. So what I want to show you here's some clips that ran on that effort. We wound up in Forbes magazine. Mr. Griffin over at the airport, thank you, helped promote this. Yahoo Finance, wound up in Market Watch, Travel Pulse, all these places ran. Now Thrillist, you may or may not know, is a really big publication. You remember what their unique visitors are a month? It's probably like 10 million that they see just in that alone. Again, promoting what we're doing to be able to talk about the region and the impact that it has. So instead of being passive and just putting together some social platforms, we had nearly 375 stories that ran across the country on this effort alone. It created more than 244 plus million impressions. And if you want to just look at some of the other media that was generated, New York Times, AP, Fox News, CBS, it went on. And kudos to the entire team for all the tremendous work they did to help us elevate during a time when most destinations are just kind of creating these passive messages. Some of the things that you guys don't see that our marketing team puts together, Tom and Christina and everyone, we look at data all the time. That helps guide us to what we're doing. And what I want to point out here is part of the year-to-date performance when it comes to sessions. If you take a look at the chart, your yellow chart is 2023 versus FY 2022 in red. And Rick, to your point, we do look at 19 in the orange. So we look at that in terms of what's there. So compared to last year, we've had a significant increase in website usage as we create our marketing platforms and what we're doing, a 58% increase in users and a 56% increase in terms of sessions. So this is the users and the sessions that we had. And again, if you look at that yellow, we're trending higher compared to last year and pre-COVID overall. And we expect that trend to continue as we work on messaging. So we're driving the traffic and we're getting people engaged with everything that we're doing. Again, what we have to always look for is seasonality, because during the summer, you have more people that are coming here. So the sessions that you see in July, and that information is probably related to all of our special events and everything that we do to promote that. Christina tells me often that that's one of the most frequently used parts of our website. And so that skews really high during the summer when we would expect that. Website conversions, those handoffs that we talk about, again, partner referrals are up by the year by 65%. Look at July and August of where we were compared to both last year and 19. Very significant. As travel has come back, demand has come back, and we're certainly skewing ahead of everything that we're doing year over year. So we're on our way to hitting that goal overall. Marketing summary, this is not only in your packet, but this is also put in the CEO update that you also got. What I would like to, I'll go through each one of these. The earned media has already surpassed the yearly goal that we have. We hit it hard early, and as you saw just from that one piece, we're doing really well in that. And our social side has already hit its goal. The other areas are all on track, and I challenge our team: are we on pace to meet those goals for the year? And we are on pace for every single one of these goals that the board has defined to meet those goals for the year. What you do is you see paid media impressions usually does lag, because the springtime program of what we're putting that paid stuff into action is usually when it gets a little warmer and we're attracting folks. So The good news is the marketing folks are all performing like they should, and we're on track to hit our goals. Next, I want to talk about is marketing RFPs. And what we do is we're currently RFPing every single contract that we have with all of our partners. So if it wasn't on the transition that we had with the buildings that Trent and Jose and team did, we're now going through that in every other piece of our business. I want to point out right now that we'll start on the far right, on the top, the SEO and the web development RFPs are already out. They were released back in November. The submissions took place in January. We had 12 submissions, and currently we're going through an internal review on both SEO and web development. They could be together, they could be separate based upon the submission. So we're not saying that we're going to keep them together, but we've had a nice, strong demand. The agency of record, we're also reviewing that. That also includes two functions, both brand development and the media buying areas. At the end of January, that was put out. The deadline just happened. We're currently going through response to questions, and that RFP submissions are due on March 20th. Again, in process, we've got strong demand of a lot of folks that want to talk to us. And then we've got the destination master plan, which is part of our goals that we put out in there. The questions deadline was February 3rd, and then end of this month is when those response to questions. So again, we're evaluating everything. We will come back and make recommendations to the board later in the year for approval, but know that we're going through all those things right now with every agency, both local and national, to be able to look at the business.
Charles, just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Can you just explain a little bit of the award process? Is that an internal conversation?
Yeah,
That would bring a single recommendation to the board?
it will. So we're not required to go to RFP, is my understanding. So, but we wanted to make sure that we went out to everyone to make sure that we gave everyone the opportunity. We will review that internally. Christina and Tom are putting together a panel. They will make recommendations, and then we will bring the winner that we believe, much like we do with the food service, back to you guys, same thing, to make that final recommendation to you.
The other thing, Charles, usually when we've done that in the past, it's always come to the board. I've had a lot of ad agencies reach out to me on this RFP. I was kind of surprised because they were saying that we were looking at doing a rebrand. And so, I mean, our rebrand wasn't done that long ago. And, you know, what does that look like? I mean, I guess, to me, I was a little caught off guard because that is something that is super, I would think, important to the board. Because it wasn't done that long ago, and I think we put a lot of money into it.
Well, so what we've done is, there's a couple things, Mayor, that we're not ready to talk about publicly when it comes to the rebrand. I'm happy to have a side conversation, but what we want to do is, we want to make sure that all the agencies that we work with are kept fresh and on their toes. And I'll defer to Christina, the BVK that's been with us since last 5 years, 6 years?
18.
So 18, so it's been 5 years, so we need to do a refresh. And anybody that works with agencies, you want to make sure, no matter who it is. What we don't have up here, we don't have PR. We signed a 2-year contract with PR because they reduced their costs and really worked with us. We're going to do that a year from now with Ben. But what we want is, certainly, just like we went through with the food service program, that the board trusts us to make the right decisions and make the recommendations. Certainly, we don't approve it because it's over that threshold.
So you're planning to do a rebrand, is that what I'm hearing? And then the other thing is, quite honestly, we heard from BBK a lot. Because I think our brand is really important because we did go through, I mean, it was extensive. I don't know who was on the board at the time, but it was extensive, and it was meetings, outreach. We brought in the general public, came in with the new logo and the coloring and all of that. And we haven't heard from them in a very, very long time.
No, what we've done from a tactical standpoint, Mayor, is we've actually done a lot of brainstorming, not only with BBK, but the marketing folks have brought together all the agencies to make sure that they're working together and going through that period. But certainly, I would hope and expect that the board would have confidence in our team to be able to make the recommendations as the experts to come back to the board and to present that.
Involved in that process.
Sorry?
So I said, usually we are involved in that process. So I was a little surprised when I had added reaching out to me. I'm like, wow, I think our brand is really amazing. We spent a lot of time on it, Christina. I mean, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
So I guess I was a little surprised because typically the board is a little bit more involved in that process. Or BBK is coming in and talking about like, what do they think is next? I mean, it's shifted so much, especially with the last meeting when you guys saw that presentation. Remember, Ann, you were talking about, oh, I feel like we need maybe an older demographic. So I'm not saying that, right? Right, and then it shifted
So Mayor, we're not,
very recently. So
yeah, we're not talking rebrand right here. We're not, and if we talk rebrand, the board will certainly be involved, because that's significant, not only for us, but for the region.
Okay.
And there's some things that we're working on behind the scenes that might impact whether we do or not do, and we will certainly come to the board in a timely fashion to be able to talk about that if we get there. So we're not set on doing that rebrand, but we are talking about brand development and the agency of record. I'm actually surprised that an ad agency would turn to the mayor directly instead of working with our directly with our folks, but
Everyone turns to the mayor, just so you know.
hey,
Keep them on the weather.
I'm sure. Oh, I'm sure.
Thank you, but they also hate the mayor whenever their roads are terrible. So just so you know, Charles, everyone likes to come to the mayor.
Hey, Mayor, the last thing I want to do is get in your way, whether it's weather or anything else. But I do want to reiterate, we will definitely come to the board if we ever go through a rebrand. The board will actually have that input.
Your pothole, Hillary.
Well, this morning, it was, I was one of the calls for the health department. Well, I'm not the county. And it was over donuts. So.
We will try to keep those calls away from you, Mayor, moving forward.
Yeah, that's my concern, because I was just really surprised.
Yep.
I didn't bring it up because I thought, oh, that's probably not the case, but now you're talking about it, so I'm like.
Well, we haven't,
I guess it is the case.
we haven't put rebrand in here right now. And so, like I said, if and when we do that, we will certainly come to the board in a timely fashion and lay out the case if we think it is, and get input from the board to help us make that decision.
Okay, I just.
Charles, Madam Chair.
Mr. Chapman?
I think it's important to go through these processes, you know, whether you are unhappy or not with your current agency doesn't really matter. I mean, they could be doing a great job, and it keeps them sharp too, if they want to kind of put their name back into it. So I think that's very important to do that. And it's not necessarily, I don't think a brand redo, it's really, you know, campaign refreshing, things like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
More importantly, I think the agency is the first group that gets tired of the campaign, then the client, and then the customer. So I don't think nothing's stale on what you were doing at all.
Thank
I think it's always good to go. We do it every 3 years, actually.
Appreciate that. So we're about 5 years from doing that. I appreciate that feedback. And while we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ideas here, you're talking about any one of those agencies that currently work on that, they also turn over people. So you've got different people that are coming in, different things that are happening. And as the board, you know, we hope that you look to us as the experts to say, you need to be able to evaluate and drive that as long as it makes sense. And certainly, to the mayor's point, we'll come back, you know, when there's approval to make sure that you guys are aware and buy into what we're doing when we get to that stage. So appreciate those comments.
So are you doing any more, are you doing any other RFPs for anything besides what's up there?
Yes, sir, we are. These are the ones that we put into place so far.
And do you have a list of other ones you're gonna go out to, or are you gonna let us know later, or?
We will certainly let you know as we get ready to do that. So from a business standpoint, that is.
Just the, I'm talking the other side of this, there's other, yeah.
No, absolutely. And
Lobbying, et cetera.
anything that happens, we will do an RFP to make sure, and we should be doing that, to Andy's point, we should be doing that every 3 to 4 years to make sure that we are in that case. The clerk says that there's a question online. I'm guessing it's Ms. Fraza.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and Charles, and sorry I'm not there, delayed school start today. Just a couple questions on the presentation, Charles, and I know we're not agendized for legislation, but you did mention the legislature, and I just think there were some issues that came up regarding food vending and some other legislative notes that the RSCVA may want to take a position on. And I don't know from legal if we can, and I don't know if the board's familiar with them, but it does impact our facilities, and especially that food vendor bill. I know the last event, I think at the REC, even the convention center, you had illegal vendors out there, which obviously impacts the revenue to the RSCVA, but also it's a health issue. So I just wanted to bring that. I don't know. I think the NRA is on it, but I also think that was important enough. Some of these things that are starting to be proposed that the RSCVA may want to take a position on.
Yes, thank you for that, Ms. Fraza. What you saw in the CEO report that's out there is Jesse Wadhams and his group is looking at every single bill and what potentially affects us on an ongoing basis. When we put together that update, it was probably at about 400 potential bills. It's now at about 11 or 1,200. We will look into that and come back, and I'll either report back to you in the CEO report and or on the next board meeting, kind of where that stands. So thanks for bringing that up.
And then
Um,
on the, just getting on the RFPs, I do think this is good to go out. We did it at the airport too, every 5 years. I will say, on the rebranding, Charles, I just want to make sure that I understand this correctly, because before your time at the RSCVA, I mean, there were, I think board members probably get a chuckle out of this. I think west of center was one of the slogans. So I do want to make sure that any kind of rebrand does come back to the board.
1,000%. If you look on the slide, the word rebrand is not mentioned here. So I just want to be clear, that's not part of the RFP process currently. It's agency of record, brand development, media buying, SEO, web development, and destination master plan. It's noted, as the mayor said, we will come back to you if and when we ever talk about that rebrand to get the board's input for sure.
And then just one other quick question on the destination master plan. Is this what we were talking about as far as land uses around our facilities or tourism improvement districts?
Yeah, this is the 20 to 30 year master plans that lots of DMOs do around the country. We talked about that at a previous meeting, and that has actually been instituted by this board for my goals for the year.
Right.
And so we have gone out to secure potential folks who would help lead that. That is a multi-year effort that is looking out 20 to 30 years, that we would work with lots of folks, whether it's the city of Reno, the downtown partnership, transportation, all those elements that really impact, kind of working together with everyone, hoping to get to one large plan with everyone.
Okay, yeah, and I guess because I didn't see the RFP, that one is particular interest to me to work with all the local governing agencies on that, and how that's coordinated. We talked about Virginia Street last meeting. I think that meeting's tonight, for the public input. But I think, I'm glad to see that's going out. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ms. Silver, I got to Ms. Silver, then Mr. Murdoch, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted Ms. Barraza to know that every Wednesday, the trade associations and major chambers, Las Vegas and Reno Sparks meet to over 1,100 bills, and we're on top of the vendor bill, and we're watching that closely. I know Jesse will be reporting to you on our position on that, and just make sure that everyone's aware, we're all watching anything that might relate to tourism, impact on our businesses, visitors, etc.
Yeah, the one thing that we're looking at closely is that our friends in Las Vegas actually have a bill to enlarge their board. They're actually looking to go from 14 to 15 members. That is currently in session. They're actually looking to add someone from the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. So Las Vegas is looking to alter their board makeup. And so again, we're watching everything that we get across our desk, and we'll certainly update the board as we go through.
Mr. Murdoch?
Just real quick, we've taken the procedure is all over the big piece of legislation. There's also some homeless issues on some legislation that could do it. So I just want to reiterate again that this is super ultra important to us in the north for tourism. It's, makes the world go around here. So hopefully Jesse and team are really on this, because we don't need to, get beat up down there and all of a sudden change what's going on.
Well, again, I'm happy to talk about it. We're kind of off topic of the RFPs, but I'm happy, it's good to know that we're all.
Reiterate that we're all over it. It's that big a thing that's already gone up our.
But it does, in fact, Jesse is all over this.
Yeah. And it's gone.
Line with
And just to, with whatever comes up, if something does that's major, we've got the executive legislative subcommittee that Jesse will be coming to us to keep that subcommittee apprised of anything legislative that we might have to jump right on, that we would come here to the board, but we'll be watching it from the subcommittee.
And one more comment was, it's good to bring in the downtown improvement district, because they are highly involved with it, and we've talked to them and reached out, and they're connected to the legislature as well. They have some input that we all ought to be, just gathering our forces to be able to keep tourism going.
So going back and continuing here, thank you all for that great input. The customer advisory board that we had recently, third one that we had, I want to call out Mr. Sturbins and the Nugget for hosting. We really appreciate that. What you see in this photo is you have not only our 15 folks that attended, but you have some of our staff and everyone during a reception. We were holed up for 2.5 days, and it was great input. For those of you that made the reception on the first night, thank you for taking the time to be there. really helping to guide us. And we're seeing some possible RFPs and business come out of it. Again, not our intent, but really strong contributions from people that care about our destination and that are really ambassadors. So a really successful event that we recently had as well. I want to come back now and visit something that was asked during the last meeting as a follow-up. And so the COLAs were brought up, and I want to be able to talk about that to give you all a better explanation kind of where we were at, because there were some questions that were asked. So from January 2019 to December 2022, the cost of living increases by the Consumer Price Index, which is done on a national scale, was 17.77%. And this was done nationally. What we wanted to do is, before we instituted any increases for our staff, we wanted to benchmark of what was happening locally. So the city of Reno gave their employees a 17.50% increase during that time period, while Washoe County gave their employees a 16.5% increase. Again, both lower than what the CPI was. And again, what we did here was we instituted a 10% COLA increase during that 3-year period for employees. Now, one of the questions that was asked during the last board meeting is, what were the dollars? What was associated with that? In order for us to get that 10%, you have 3 different increases that were put in place. One on July 1st of 21, one on July 1st of 22, and one on January 1st of 2023. That's 3, 4, and 3. The dollars that are associated for each of those are highlighted below. That got us to that 10%. Now, why I highlighted the bottom 2 areas, those bottom 2 areas took place after we absorbed the employees in the other facilities. So there's a skew in terms of being a little bit more expensive. But what we wanted to do is go after this conservatively versus what other areas locally were doing and against the CPI overall. Okay. So next I want to talk about board governance. Now, this was something that was brand new that took place. It's not an ongoing conference. This was invite only that was held to a very small group of DMO leaders that were working to help improve board governance on a national level and have talks about it that don't really take place at our annual conventions like DI or other things that take place during the year. They wanted to limit this only to 30 destinations. And so fortunately, I was able to push our way into that mix to be included, and they opened it up to the CEO plus 2 board members. It was the CEO plus the board chair and a second person. So I went to Chair Biden and I said, who'd you like to ask? And she chose Mr. Squaga, and we fought through the snow to get out of here, through ice storms to get down there. And we actually went down. Now, we were included, like I said, with about 30. I'm going to include about 25 of them here of the different destinations that gathered in Irving, Texas for a couple of days, first of its kind, to talk about board governance, places that are big and small. So you've got places like Seattle and Dallas and Minnesota, Anaheim, that were all part of this. And we were absolutely included as part of this initial piece. And so this is who made up this conference. It was Destinations International, which is really the governing body for all the DMOs all over the world. Civitas and John second from the right, who comes out here every year for Hot August Nights. He worries and works as a lawyer for TIDs for destinations. You had CFO by Design, Julie Hart right in the middle. I think she's got her eyes closed. She's a finance person that works with DMOs. We've got Fired Up Culture. And Chris at the far right, he's actually working with our leaders right now on professional development for our senior staff. DMO Pros, Bill Geist, who all of you have the book about board governance, third from the left, and Searchwide Gamble, who's the third from the right. And so these folks all came together to say, how do we put on a program and bring together DMO leaders, political folks, to talk about best practices in our industry? And that's really important because, again, this has never happened on this level. And so you had some mayors, you had some council people. What do we have? From Minnesota, we had the vice president of public affairs for the Vikings that was on their board. You had all sorts of folks that were part of this. And what I'm going to show you is just some random slides that are part of the presentations that, as part of best practices, these are this is not my words, this is their words of what they stated are best practices and how boards can be set up for success moving forward. And so this was part of a presentation talking about boards should be cheerleaders for the destination. They should be defending the destination and certainly negotiating on behalf of that destination in terms of making sure those best practices are in place. Boards should also play an important role in the community. It's a great opportunity to impact the community and engage residents on behalf of the DMO, able to socialize ideas and goals of what we're trying to do on behalf of the destination itself. The best boards, according to what was shared, require both orientation and onboardings. What new members need to know when they join a board, and a month-long process to build engagement as people go through that. And so when there's dangers in the air, this presentation talked about never sending your CEO into harm's way when it comes to things that are going on. Destination leadership has become extremely political all across the country, and certainly Charlene and Stephen can talk about that. But destinations and the best boards are rarely surprised when things turn ugly, but when they do, the boards step up to help squash that and defend what the DMO is doing. So this really outlines general duties of the board. Again, best practices, what boards should be doing, being a guardian of the mission and vision statement, as well as strategic plan, promoting collective and individual vigilance, understanding and reviewing the minutes of that take place, selecting and determining the compensation for and annually evaluating the performance of the CEO. And CEOs who receive written evaluations are satisfied by an increase of 10%, overseeing the financial reporting, holding management accountable for performance, providing oversight and protection of the organization's brand, assist with outside community relations. And what they emphasize here was a 30-second pitch. And the question is, if you're asked about the DMO in the community, what's your 30-second pitch about the destination? How do you tell that story about the destination when asked by people in the community, whether it's city council, people that come to see that you're in your hotels or your businesses? How do you represent that destination? Review board governance documents at least every 5 years. Periodically review the size and structure of the board, as well as evaluate the board's performance as a group and individually every 2 to 3 years. Best practices during board meetings. I'm not going to go through all this, starting at any time, creating board learnings, encouraging everyone to feel comfortable in speaking up, and ensuring that you are complying with open meeting laws. We're one of the few that has to do that, but it was interesting that they had that on there for us during their presentation. There's very few folks that have that, but there are a couple. They also talked about conflict of interest policy, guaranteeing that the best interest of the corporation over the private interests of any one of the directors, protecting tax exempt status if you haven't, outlining the duties of directors, defining interested person versus financial interests of those people. And it also includes duty to disclose, violations, record of proceedings, and certainly periodic reviews. A couple other things, whistleblower policy and records retention. We're actually going through a process right now in records retention. Lisa and I are talking about it to make sure that we're digitizing everything. So some of these things, we're still looking to improve, right? So we're looking to take all the things that were paper or not digitized, and we're going through that, but certainly best practices, folks are encouraging us to do that as well. And then they talked briefly about finance. And so here's some of the things. I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but DMOs are the stewards of those communities. And somebody else always wants the funding of the DMOs. And so certainly you need strategic plans, and without the resources associated with that, it turns into wishful thinking. Certainly board members have a fiduciary responsibility to the DMO. This is stuff that Julie talked about during her CFO presentation, that certainly we're going to have some talks with her to see, is there things that we need to look at from a financial standpoint that just enhances what we're doing on a national level from the other DMOs. Turning the page, a couple more things for you. I don't know if you've seen it, but Yelp had the top 100 places to eat in their 10th anniversary of 2023. And very proud to say that we had 3 placements in those top 100 nationally: Aurario, Ricebox, and La Condesa, coming in at 19, 33, and 45. So great news for the region that we're able to talk about when we message. And certainly want to celebrate BizBash, one of the trade organizations that talks about what happens in our industry. They had their 10th annual awards. And look at us. Best city to host a meeting, Reno. Best convention center, Reno. Kudos to everyone and what we do to be able to do that. Certainly we want to celebrate that and talk about that to help us encourage to secure additional business. Going to wrap it up here real quick. Some awards that were secured by our marketing folks. These are 7 different awards through AVA that took place. Christina told me that I think we had 4 last year. 3 or 4 last year. So again, the different content pieces that we're creating are being recognized, whether it's talking about the desert, Conference of Mayors. Thank you, Mayor, for doing that. Snowshoe trails. Certainly our bucket list family and Carson City Hot Springs. Want to go through now next piece, and that is our special events. And what we talked about is making sure everyone knows about our special events and what's taking place in the region. We just started opening up the annual applications for next year. And so hopefully everybody on this board, as well as the community, received a press release announcing that. On the left, every past participant, Tasha's reaching out to make sure that they are aware that we have the $500,000 in funding rolled out, as well as now we have it on our website. So to make sure that we're doing a thorough job, make sure everybody knows about our special events, it's there as well. We also put it in our weekly newsletter to make sure everyone sees that. And thank you to the chamber for putting that in their newsletter as well, promoting that to making sure that we're there. All in all, we're using every available platform to be able to promote the funding opportunity. And for anybody watching online that hadn't seen it yet, here's a link that you can see in the presentation that you can certainly go in and apply for funding. I'm going to wrap it up with a couple of data points. That is compliments of Longwoods, which they make public, travelers and travel plans in the next 6 months. If you look at it, at the beginning of February, travel demand is still very strong. It came in on their survey at 93%. They go back a couple of years to do that. That is the highest level of demand since they started keeping track of this survey, certainly through the dip of COVID of everything else. So travel demand is still very strong. Also concerns about personal finance situations. Again, this was February 2nd that this was done. It came in at 23%. That's about as low as it is about a year and a half since we were at 19 back in April 28th of 2020. So that's also a good sign in terms of trends. And then impact on inflation. You can look at the breakdown here. When it comes to inflation, where are our folks' thoughts in and around that impact? With that, I will ask for any questions. Ms. Gill.
Apologies, but I didn't ask this in pre-board. I didn't notice it until after our meeting. In the agenda, it talks about the one of the key initiatives, minimum of 8 partnership marketing programs, and then the need periods associated with that. And all the months of the year are considered need, except for July and August. So what my question is twofold. One is, what is partnership marketing program specifically? And then secondly, in the need periods, is it the whole month? Or is it certain weeks in those months, or things like that?
That's a great question. What I'm gonna do is, if you could, I don't want to not answer, but I can hold that. Our man in tourism Art's gonna come up and present next, and he's gonna talk about all those questions and hopefully answer that. So I don't want to steal his thunder.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch.
One comment. Great job on the bowlers, Charles.
Thank you.
Great news.
Yeah.
4 years in a row, $200 million impact in 4 years. What groups do that? Tell me. They're the biggest groups. Even the women are in the top 10 biggest convention. I call them convention. So the one point I think is important to make too on the taxation situation is you've got, as you say, 50,000 bowlers. That's not including guests. So it's a bigger number. And the second part of it, that's beautiful for us. And the second part of it is that's 75,000 room nights. I mean, what conventions do 75,000? You're going to have 75,000 with the men coming this year, and you'll go probably about 25,000 with the women, maybe 30. I mean, hopefully, give or take, getting one. And the women have never owned in the new stadium, and the men have never seen this new revitalized stadium. So if you want to think all boats are going to rise in the tide, they are now, and it just helps all of us in the city fill and it keeps those room rates up. And it's.
Yeah, thank you for the comments. First of all, it's the team does a lot of hard work to be able to get us there, and it's everybody that makes it work. We can't track necessarily how many people that they're bringing with them because we're looking at registrations for teams, but you're absolutely right. There's more people coming. I don't want to jump the gun, but the number that I heard from Mr. McDonald off the record was more than 75,000. I don't know that we can report on that yet, but that's even better in terms of what that looks like in terms of the impact.
And I think that you guys are very good at this. You're shouting it out in our community because the vendors, people that have businesses, the golf courses, the ski areas, this convention goes from March to, I think July.
Yeah. It's
Kudos.
March 4th to July 24th. So March 4th is when it kicks off. The VIP event is on the 11th and it'll go till July 24th. So you got several months that we're gonna have lots of folks coming through, which is great news for everyone.
Airport's gotta be happy with that.
Hopefully everyone in the community is.
And Charles, didn't they, and maybe you can, I thought I had read that they extended a week on each end. So they're starting earlier on the 4th.
Yeah, they're starting a week,
One
correct.
week later than the 10th. So that's how big it is. I mean, it really such great news.
And for Reno to have the 7 out of 10 years and 4 in a row is humongous.
And again, I just want to say again, a great partnership with Jason and Chad over at USBC. They're going to be here soon, and can't wait to welcome them and everyone that's coming through for this. Thank you.
No, just the bill. You know, I know Rick's given it from a perspective of the downtown property, but to your point, it benefits all of us. The compression in the market, the air seats that are filled coming in, I mean, the ripple effect on something. And I think, to your point, Charlie, I think the response from the RSCVA, they were distressed in another location, we were able to pick it up without, you know, giving up another. I think it's, that's a real win. That's a big win for us, and but there are many pieces of business out there to that scale that you can pick up. So I think that's huge.
Well, and I have to give compliments to Doug Thornley over at the city. Because we added that, and we didn't take away from any of our business. There was no additional ask, so we didn't have to go to city council to do that. And Doug got back to us within days. We were able to close that loop really fast. And so it was a great partnership with everyone involved for a win for this destination.
Thank you, Charles. And thank you for all the positive news. You're right on where I asked you to be today, and just nothing but good news all across the board. I think we're going to item F1. Mr. Jimenez with the annual plan update on tourism sales that we delayed from last month. Thank you for waiting and coming today to do your presentation.
My pleasure.
One thing I just want to say, Archie, you usually sit here with us. So in the future, I'd like to see you sitting here with us. Yes, or last meeting, I noticed you were in the gallery. So I just want to make sure that you're here at the table with
I have a
us.
special chair for that.
Okay, thank you.
Who's the chair?
Here we go. Quicker. Good morning. Share screen too. I do. Share your screen. Zoom. Okay, good. Was it still morning? Yes, it is. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. For the record, Art Jimenez, Executive Director of Tourism Sales. And Mike, it's not moving. Please put it. There we go. All right, there we go. Okay, so continuing with our strategic plan review series, Ms. Ernie and Mr. Largetta presented previously, I'm going to provide an update on part of our strategic plan on two goals: sales and marketing and destination alignment. Our overall sales and marketing goal includes a tourism sales initiative, which is to create and align our tourism sales efforts to best benefit our hotel partners and the RSCVA. So this goal does include three key initiatives: partnership marketing, sales platforms, and data mining. The first initiative directs us to create travel trade partnership marketing programs to support the destination's need periods and influence potential visitors in the decision-making cycle. And we'll continue to set ourselves apart from the competition by delivering creative call to action and branding campaigns. So we'll measure this initiative as scaled by running at least 8 programs in our key need periods. And these periods are typically September through December, January through March. And then we also like to kickstart summer bookings by running some programming in April through June. And we're probably going to wind up north of 8 campaigns, somewhere between 9 and 10. And to answer your question, when we run these campaigns, we look to a partner to match our funding. So if we contribute X dollars, that partner will match anywhere from 100% to as low as 10%. Just depends on the platform. So that extends our reach within that platform so that we can be on these shelves. For example, OTAs, online travel agencies, so Expedia, Priceline, Booking.com, they represent close to 1 million room nights in the destination. So we want to make sure that we're in that superstore, that we want to be at Costco and Sam's Club and Walmart, that we're on the shelf. You know, we want to be on the shelf here, not down here. So we certainly want to be there and not lose that momentum, especially when bowlers leave. We still need to fill the rest of the year. So hopefully that explains a little bit of the partnership marketing.
So is the, I am familiar with the programs that you're talking about, I know GSR has participated. But like, is it the same amount of spend in all the months minus those 2 summer months, or do we peak? You know, like, for example, like November is probably, or the first few weeks of December obviously is a super need, right? Whereas May, June is not so much as a need.
So we do balance the media. So when we look at media within those campaigns, we look at different assets and we look at how they're performing. If it's a banner that's horizontal or vertical or a video, we do look at that every month to make sure that each one's performing, and we can tie revenue to each asset. So if an asset is not performing as well, we'll move that revenue around from that asset to another one that is performing. So it is something that we look at on an ongoing basis. Okay, but the spend is spread equally throughout the period. We don't necessarily look at to really get into the minutia more in November. We may not need it, or more on a weekend if it's going to snow. We don't have that flexibility, but we are, you know, we are on that shelf throughout those periods. So these travel partners provide us with the platforms for us to achieve our goals of whether it's branding or call to action. We're pretty much always on with Expedia with our joint marketing campaigns, which are designed to include hotel partners with a call to action. And then we also have a new year-long travel spotlight program with Expedia that gives us the luxury to engage shoppers earlier in their decision-making cycle. It's more upper funnel, more inspirational, different messaging, so they can start thinking about us. You know, so it's the cherry on top, if you will. Pick us when you're planning your vacation. We also partner with Priceline, but on an as-needed basis. And Hotel Beds. Hotel Beds is a receptive operator, the largest in the world, and it's a B2B2C programming. So we created a business-to-business program targeting domestic and international tour operators and call center agents. Now, our Saver programming, it's pretty special to me, but it's a program that not only focuses on corporate travelers, but also focuses on converting them to pre-arrival, increasing their trips, whether it's pre-arrival, extended stay, or come back on a vacation. We continue to support Travel Nevada with programming, whether it's on sales missions or specifically, we do work with them on Expedia to promote intrastate travel, primarily from Las Vegas. To date, we've completed several programs with Hotel Beds, Sabre, Expedia, and our return on investment, or we like to call it ROAS, we're doing anywhere from 33 to 1 to 414 to 1 return on our spend, which is pretty good. And last year we ended up with about 100 to 1 return. So I think we're managing our dollars and getting more than our money's worth. So here are a couple of our partnership marketing examples. Again, we continue to be aggressive in this highly competitive travel space, and media at times can be hard to secure, which is why we plan way out in advance. Typically, we'll let these partners know in May or June what our plans would like to be for the entire fiscal year, so that we're make sure that we have, you know, we're not surprised and not be able to get that space. So the second initiative revolves around refining our travel trade engagement, training, communication, and sales platforms. This audience includes travel advisors, tour operators, and call center agents. So in order to compete with like-minded destinations, we'll continue our quarterly and monthly email communications and travel advisor live webinar training sessions. We want to make sure that these sellers of travel have the right tools to sell our destination properly. We've also fine-tuned our partnership with Travel Nevada and the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. We're partnering on sales missions, FAMs, and client development events. And I'll explain a little bit more in a moment of what that is. So here are a couple of our training and communication examples. Most notable, we do work every month with a company by the name of Mailpound, where we target 50,000 travel advisors throughout the United States.
And we provide destination updates on air service, property enhancements, and special events. So I mentioned that we're collaborating even more with Travel Nevada and the RSCVA. So we share resources, we share planning, we share staff, and we share budgets. And we're able to deliver some really unique client experiences during our sales missions and trade shows. Anywhere from hosting clients to exclusive events in Tequila, Mexico, to renting out a suite at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, or events on the Hudson River in New York City. We came out with a sales mission in last May, and we were told by the travel advisors in the Northeast area that we were the first bureaus to come out of the box after COVID to promote their destination. So we're not only setting Reno apart from the competition, but we're setting Nevada apart from the competition. Why is this important? This fellow that was our tour guide in one of the distilleries in Tequila, Mexico. I don't recall his name, but he was born in Reno. So, little fun fact. So FAMs, and no one can argue that seeing is believing. We've developed a great partnership with Travel Nevada and Volaris Airlines, with hosting tour operators, media, and influencers. And working with Volaris is important to sustain that nonstop flight from Guadalajara. So this spring, we're going to roll out a new FAM, the Reno Tahoe Experience. It's going to focus solely on Washoe County. And we're also going to be bringing in 4 influencers from Mexico City and Guadalajara in early April. So as I mentioned, the Reno Tahoe Experience is going to highlight Reno, Sparks, and Incline Village. One full day is going to be dedicated to each city's properties and activities. And we're going to be inviting decision makers in the tour operator sector and also travel advisors and some key OTA folks. We're going to be working with Brand USA also in hosting FAMs as part of a super FAM from the UK and Australia in April and June. So the tourism team attends several appointment-based trade shows, IPW, National Tour Association, Travel Exchange, American Bus Association, International Association of Adult Tour Operators, and Go West Summit. So if you recall, we were fortunate to be the host city in 2022 for Go West Summit and IEGTO, and most recently in November, National Tour Association. Which, by the way, those 3 shows that we hosted were their first time back into the market after COVID. So the third initiative revolves around Washoe County room nights booked by travel advisors in the GDS platforms. Now, these aren't platforms that can be booked by a consumer. They can only be booked by a travel advisor. So the bookings are predominantly individual corporate travelers. And by the way, corporate travel is getting back to 2019 levels. So our high water mark was in calendar year 19, we registered 190,000 room nights. Last year, calendar year, we were just under 190,000 room nights. Now keep in mind that these room nights are higher ADRs. Last time I checked, they were about $184 per room. And these are predominantly the flagship properties. And to give you an idea of where they were in 2021, there were about 150,000 room nights. So we had a nice increase in 1 year. And we're also going to be working with Travel Nevada and our marketing team to develop a really robust, what we call a bleisure program. That's converting a business traveler into a leisure traveler. So how do we use this data? So this data we use to prepare biannual reports for our hotel partners. Our partners are always looking for new business. It's a great prospecting tool as identified. We also use it to identify sellers of travel, which is important when we invite these folks to our sales development events. So the second goal I'm going to update you on is on part of our destination pillar, specifically community engagement. Essentially, we're working with our DMO partners to strengthen Northern Nevada's brand. The goal is 2 initiatives centered around scheduled DMO presentations and building stronger relationships with our area DMOs. The first initiative focuses on inviting the DMOs to present to our sales and marketing teams. We want to be aligned with all of our promotional messaging. So the goal is to conduct 8 DMO presentations in fiscal year 23. But it's not just about getting our DMO partners to come in here and present to us. It's also to enhance the overall collaborative efforts. Mr. Chapman, we're looking to have you guys come out soon. Looking forward to that. The team is really excited to hear about your rebrand. And the second initiative centers around building stronger relationships, a cross sharing of information, and to ultimately increase visitation to Washoe County. We're going to compile a database profile of each DMO, highlighting collaborative efforts, whether they're FAM cooperation, sales mission participation, or partnership marketing. We're going to profile and catalog each DMO special events, activities, their unique character, and so on and so forth. And of course, the profile is going to be easily available by sales and marketing teams here at the RSCVA, all of which is going to be intended to increase our visitation to the region. Year to date, we chopped up some good wins with our DMO collaboration. We secured $20,000 from Travel Nevada to go towards the NTA convention that was here in November. We also secured $10,000 from the Reno Tahoe territory that paid for 6 pretty good sized fans during NTA. And then the tourism marketing team, as I mentioned, we're going to be working very closely with Travel Nevada to build a really robust leisure program to create pre-arrival awareness, to increase stays for those corporate travelers that are coming here. And coincidentally, not coincidentally, by the way, those 190,000 room nights, 90% of those arrivals are midweek. They're here 2 nights. So we can just go one more night. We're talking some good numbers. That concludes my presentation. I wanted to keep it really high level. Are there any comments, questions? Ms. Silverman?
Ms. Silver?
Madam Chair, Art, thank you. That was really helpful. I just had a suggestion that might seem silly to you, but in many of the areas, Carson, Fallon, Burnley, all these areas you've noted, the partnerships, you might consider including the chambers of commerce. Much like our chamber of commerce, we get about 100 calls per week because people don't know what an EGON is or an RSCVA or all these acronyms, but they always know there's a chamber. So you might consider including their CEOs of their chambers because they must often take the calls from people looking to visit. We get every afternoon at 3, which is, I guess, check-in time. It's taken us 7 years to figure out. But I'll just bring off you might want to consider the chambers because in many of these smaller communities, the chambers are very actively involved in tourism as we are.
And I would imagine that indirectly we are working with the chambers because we do go to our DMO contacts and rely on them to go out and source whatever we need, whether it's rooms for a fam or activities. So I would think that indirectly that they're doing that, but we'll put that on our agenda.
Great point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Mr. Scott?
No, thank you, Art. Is it possible, Art or Charles, for even next meeting, when you talk about the corporate mix going through like Booking Crusade or OTAs, just thinking whether it's a pie chart, whatever, to kind of see where that mix is,
Sure.
where it's evolved from.
Absolutely.
Because I agree, I think that.
I think to your point, there's some really good data there that we could use.
Well, and even like you brought up, and I will leave this a long time with the whole leisure piece, but if your average stay is a 2-night stay, there's the most natural target to go, how do we extend a night? Yeah, because that's not having to go out and spend on a new customer. But,
Exactly. They're already here.
but it would just be helpful to kind of see how that's more.
Well, and that really talks to his leisure campaign, right? How do we take the existing customer and get them to extend for the weekends? So they're coming here on business during the week. How do we get that 1 or 2 nights on the weekend, which we're seeing more and more in the industry. And I'm thrilled that Art's working on that to say, how do we then localize that to that here?
Yeah, we're going to be working on a big program. We just started talking to Travel Nevada. It's going to be a pretty heavy lift. And again, they're already here to your point. And just as a side note, the tourism channel that we know of represents almost 30% of the overall mix into the city. And that's what we know of. It's probably more than 40%, but we can't quantify
When
that.
you say that, what do you mean? You mean?
So if you look at all the room nights, if you look at a pie, and you've got Hotel Direct, you've got group, and then you've got third party channel, which is tourism sales, OTA, travel advisors. Receptive operators, we're almost 30% of that mix into the market.
And that's what we know.
That's what we know, yeah.
Mr. Murdock.
Two questions. I used to be a big powwow guy. We used to, El Dorado used to go to powwow. Do you powwow anymore?
Absolutely.
That's IPW. It's like, that's how you.
Oh, you can't say powwow anymore.
You can't say powwow? Oh, is it,
But when they ask what is IPW, they mean International Powwow.
is it, because powwow, I think what you're seeing in all these statistics, powwow gotta be a heck of a,
Oh, yeah.
or IBW gotta be a heck of a.
Especially over
Am I
the
old or what?
especially over the last 6 years, you know, powwow, they've really started bringing in more domestic operators and mice meeting. We do partner with Travel Nevada in their row, so we have a real nice presence at your trade shows.
And Rick, and you're right, I mean, a lot of us have changed from how to IPW. But Art and his team does a great job. Ben, from a media standpoint, goes in there, and I go in there, Andy's there. You guys representative?
Yeah, we do.
It is for international travel coming into the United States, it's huge. So this year it's in San Antonio, and we'll be there, folks.
We'd love to help you, have us join us. We need the help in the booth.
He doesn't even know the proper name, you can't do it.
We'll bring along.
I'll be able to, hey, hey, Mark, on that 30% leisure, is that, what total number is that of? And then to add to that, another question on back of that is, do we know what the airport mix is now? It used to be 45, 60, or
I don't have that.
55 business, tourism seats. I mean, are we seeing any changes in any of this?
I don't have that number on the top of my head, but on the overall mix, it's 28%. It's been consistent for years now.
In the total room nights in the city,
Correct. The total room nights into the city,
including convention.
including convention,
Business, everything.
everything, 28% are, you know.
It's through the channel.
Correct. And of that 28%, 60% or so are OTAs. Another 20% are travel advisors at a much higher ADR, GDS. And then the rest of the bucket is made up by motor coach, tour operators, ski, golf, and so on.
So this is really a dumb question. As you go through and you look at promotions and everybody likes the third night pushover, you know, how you try to make them. Do you charge more for the 2 nights and then give them a 3-night on the other end in need periods? Or do you guys come up with that, or is that individual profit?
That's up to the properties.
Okay.
I'd like to see more of that. You know,
I
I think we need more of that.
If you had a, like I say, a citywide or a regional wide, stay a third night, but you know, as long as we get our revenue on the first 2 nights, we're okay, we can afford to do that, but
Especially during,
just asking that question.
especially during a need period.
Yeah, especially when you're on your, thank you.
Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Art. That's great. Just kind of keying on the international piece a little bit. And I don't believe, and obviously you're engaged in a lot of programs on the international perspective and working with operators there. But I don't believe the RSCVA has ever engaged in representation with a firm in market, at least haven't for some time. So that's one question there. I want to expand on it a little bit. We just re-engaged for North Shore, our Australian market representation in market in July, and we just started our Canadian representation in February of this year. And I don't know, Charles, if this is kind of maybe on the strategic discussion as we move forward. I know you're very familiar with this as well, but I think having some targeted in-market representation, you know, because it does drive those longer stays, extended stays through those international wholesalers and operators. So I know you work with a lot of those folks and going to Canada with Travel Nevada as we are as well, but you know, looking at maybe an international representation within targeted markets is something that we should be thinking about for the next strategic effort.
And if you recall, Mr. Chapman, for the board's edification, we did have representation in China for about 3 years. And then that really wasn't working out. We spent a lot of money there and we dialed that down before COVID, way before COVID. And then we're starting to get back into it. In fact, we're working with Travel Nevada's GMS marketing firm in Mexico to bring in these 4 influencers. And I think there's certainly going to be a discussion that we can have some sort of representation, whether it's PR or social, you know, certainly in Canada and Mexico, and maybe even partner with some of the area DMOs.
Yeah, if I can chime in on that, Andy. So GMS is, because we fly international into Mexico, our really push for us to be engaged with Alex, who's great over there. And so we've done that. I think a lot of that international direct will be predicated on the lift that we get from the airports. So if we can get into cannabis and direct lift, that helps us to engage. Otherwise, what we're looking at is how do we steal from San Francisco when they come in or up through LA to be able to do that, because without that international lift, it's gonna be really hard to engage in a dedicated resource for that.
Yeah, but there's certainly a one flat or a one stop scenario, but there is a lot of that business coming back into play later.
Which is why we're at UW and going through that for sure, so we're gonna kind of.
Yeah, and on the international side are too, I think obviously the opportunity now that international has lagged so far behind post-COVID. That international travel people have not been, they didn't travel obviously during COVID. And then it's been slower to pick up than the domestic market has been. So the opportunities there for the international, whether it's Mexico, Canada, Australia, is awesome. I love Sydney, great opportunities there. And then flights that we know through, from Australia, New Zealand into LA or San Francisco, it is one stop. But I think just the fact that that's starting to pick up, we don't know with inflation and prices. And airfares are up tremendously, but the international market is a different one for sure, and how that will affect the international travel. But it's good news that it's picking up and might give us some opportunities.
100%.
And I would just add, don't discount fly drive. Because you get people into what our research shows out of Australia, the kind of the California, Nevada region is getting about 8 days of a 13-day visit out of an Australian traveler coming into San Francisco or LA. So you don't necessarily, because they're going to spend many, time in many destinations. So let's get our share of that.
So two things around this that are important. We know for a fact that international travelers stay longer and spend more. So certainly it's a target market we want to go after. The second thing, and what we're working at on a national level, that we all from this destination as well as every other have to be active in. The visa wait times for international travel is still far too long. I want to say Brazil is something like 500 days to get a visa to come in. So from US travel, what they're working on is how to reduce that. And so they engage with leaders like myself and other destinations to put pressure on the federal side to reduce those wait times. So as much as we want to do that, we've got to look and be able to see where can we dip our toe in the water to have that impact for those countries that have reduced wait times.
Well, US Travel just sent out that note, and they have the tourism day coming up in Washington.
We'll be there. I'll be there for that. So we will call on all the elected officials, pressuring them on those visa wait times.
And Senator Rosen's very much.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Rick, one more comment and we'll move on.
Art, I am your NCOT commissioner here in Reno, for the record. And I have a meeting next week with the Lieutenant Governor. We should probably pal out here on the RSCVA level. And talk about it. Yeah. I know Charles is on the board with me, but it's, we can help ring the towel a little bit. In other words, NCOT can help us in it. Like I said, I like to say this. Like this money out of them, maybe in some of our programs, or help, like you just said, do promote in the OTA world or anything. So use me
Okay.
while you got me, because I'll be gone soon.
You can volunteer. You can volunteer. So.
No, I'm there. I mean, I want to know what I do as an NCOT commissioner, what to do something for this.
Okay, thank
Or any of
you.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate question. Yeah, go ahead.
Art, wonderful presentation, love it, and I love that you're working with all those other. Because in the past, before you got here, you didn't do that, and I think it's so helpful. Can you give like an example how you sort of turn that customer into that like third night? What does that look like? Like, how do you have to, sort of work
So it's not,
promotions with the properties? Like, how does that work?
so it's not as easy as it may seem, because those 190,000 room nights that are coming into GDS, you can't communicate with that consumer directly. You have to communicate to the travel advisor, who then says, Mike, I know that you like to ride bikes, and the Renaissance has a free bike rental. So that's what the Renaissance would promote on the messaging in the GDS. So you have to get to that travel advisor, right? That's one strategy that we do work on. We have about 10 properties that work with us every month on Savory programming. On the consumer side is, all the great work that Christine is doing, letting them know that there are so many things to do here.
Yeah.
Especially, right now where the wide open space destinations are so popular.
Yeah.
And people are just craving that information. So hopefully that'll translate to them saying to their travel advisor, I want another night.
You know, to,
Great job.
to your point though, Mary, because I even, kind of keep it late on it. It's ones and twos, right? But we had a very small conference that ran on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. When we met with them, we also said, look, we'll extend the special rates for Friday. They did something with Mount Rose, their attendees, and they probably lost, I'd say 60% when we moved on and went home. But I'd say about 30% I did actually go up to Mount Rose, took advantage of the scheme.
I love that.
They're going to Bobos for their rental and they're, it's positive.
So that's the overall economic impact.
Yes.
We do it in our business, but the upselling,
Yep.
I mean, they're already, it's like 80% of your business comes from like that already existing customer in, certain sectors, and ours is one of them, so I'm always focusing on how do you get that current customer to
So one of
spend
the-
more, travel more, whatever, say, we have their attention, so let's use it, because I think that's a missed opportunity if you don't, so I love what you're doing, Art, it's fantastic, great job.
Thank you, thank you,
Okay, thank you, Art.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I got a seat for you right here, baby.
Okay, moving on to board matters, G1. Review and discussion related to the Reno Tahoe Visitor Profile Study, key findings, which was, we had a presentation last month, and everyone was really interested in that one sheet page that we have, and I'm gonna turn it over to Christina.
Yes, thank you. So my understanding that the purpose of the agenda item here today is to kind of revisit our discussion that we had last month. It seemed like we were cut a little bit short on time, and I feel like we felt that people weren't able to ask as many questions as they probably had. And so I think the point of the agenda item today is to open it up for questions. If anyone had any thoughts or feedback on what destination analysts provided last week for us. We had the one sheet last month and you have it in front of you again today. If there were any questions, I'm happy to review any of it. If you want me to run through any of them quickly, but these are the key takeaways that we are really going to, we've actually already started shifting our targeting in our audiences, in our media placements for spring and summer based on some of this feedback, whether it's redefining income or the age, or incorporating, we were talking about gaming last month and how, it's shifted into becoming a priority for the millennial and younger audience, and they don't associate gaming as much with Reno Tahoe. The older audience does identify Reno Tahoe with gaming, but it's not as key of a decision maker. So we're kind of making that shift as well in some of our messaging. So I just wanted to open it up to the floor and see if anyone had any further questions, or I'm happy to continue discussing some
I
of
think
the changes.
of all of these, there's some pretty key findings and they are across the board as we look at all of these, bullet points.
Yeah.
What would you say you think are probably the most important, or the most would drive, do any of them drive the decisions of what you're doing more heavily than the other ones? I know you gotta take them all into consideration.
Yeah.
But what really kind of went, well, this is a change, or we're right on track with it, kind of what drives you, or all of these, the most that impacts our marketing, our sales, our, how we.
Absolutely.
how we do this.
Yeah, to your point, all of these are key takeaways out of, this whole report has key findings in it. There's 180 pages of key findings. And so it was really hard to drill down this listing of, I don't know how many there are, I think 10 or so key findings. So this is the compiled version of the greater key findings. We are taking into consideration many more findings, but these were some of the ones that we specifically wanted to focus on. Of course, as our vision statement is to become the preferred destination for outdoors gaming and events. So those three, of course, are key pillars that we hope is to continue focusing on. They really all are important. I can't pick a favorite, but ease of visiting, transportation, getting here. We all have really focused on our air service fund, the way that we're targeting, focusing more on video our TikTok and those real style videos have become very highly engaging. And so we're really updating some of our video and social media spends going away from, I guess, more of the, less of a storytelling, messaging standpoint. They're all important.
Question on that, when you mentioned TikTok,
Yes.
are you seeing any pushback because of a lot of the negative perception and fears and
Yeah.
kind of media narrative that's gone on in recent months, especially TikTok? How is that affecting or is it not?
So when I say TikTok, I try to say the TikTok style videos. It's not, TikTok itself is a very important platform, but those style of videos, those reels are performing just as well, if not better, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube Shorts. So it's really that style of video that is becoming very important to the consumer right now, more so than the platform. So even if there were changes that were made to that platform, I still think it's a valuable investment because we get so much reach out of it across the other platforms. And we're seeing very high engagement and conversion rates.
Okay, Mr. Tugger?
Just, and again, like you said, I don't know how many pages that, but obviously we're tacking a little different, you're making tweaks. Can you just kind of give a high level where some of the shifts are? Age, demographic, whatever you're looking at.
Yep, so you can kind of see here, we kind of highlighted that the average age of visitor this past year is 53 years old. And we still believe, you can see in that action item, is to keep our key target audience. We have it tiered into several different groupings, but our key target audience, I would say, is a bell-shaped curve around the age of around 45. 47, in terms of the research that DA did, is the average age of our best potential target audience. So that's why we have shifted that curve and keep it there, even with the average age being 53. Now, like I said, it's a bell-shaped curve. It still reaches both ends of that range, but we do feel that. So with that being said, we do feel that the millennial audience is still the best customer to in the key part of that bell-shaped curve. I shouldn't say the best customer, as the potential customer of the future. And that's what DA's analysis really showed us in terms of their spending habits. And again, planning that base for the future and also segmenting, filling in some gaps that are maybe needed in terms of what other people are doing in this destination as well with their targeting.
And just because
Thank you, I'm sure. This is great, really helpful. I would imagine though, well, let me put it this way, if you were to ask me what I think one of the biggest hurdles is air transportation. And I know there are many people here involved in RAS. Previously, I still think we're viewed as a destination that involves more stops than
Yep.
direct flights. So.
And that was the feedback we got.
Yeah, and that's what we hear when we're talking to people and we get a lot of calls, as I mentioned. People are saying, is there any direct flight from X? And we'll look it up and say, no, but you could go through this way. So I just encourage our entire board to focus on supporting as much direct service as we can get, because there are people who will not visit because it takes a stop and they are worried about losing their luggage or what they'll do for a 2.5 hour wait. So I know, having just gone through that process, more direct flights is what I hope we can focus on.
Absolutely. And I think the other side of that coin that we've been really focusing on this past year too, is in some of those key markets where we do have nonstop flights, to promote that we have a nonstop flight from those destinations that may be a longer haul flight. I know we don't have many that span across the whole country right now, but we are doing a campaign in New York, bringing awareness that we do have a nonstop flight to get butts on those seats, to get them to our destination, hopefully sustain some of those longer flights, whether it's in Texas or New York right now. Those are two we are focusing on.
That's great.
Yeah.
We publish the direct flights to and from Greenville Airport, just because even local people need to know.
Mhm.
I can get to, Houston on a
Yeah.
direct flight. I don't have to stop, somewhere else or go to LA first. So I just think that remains one key. Maybe we're not associated with gaming as much as we're associated with a place that there aren't enough direct flights or from.
And it's just a follow-up, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Murdock. So Christina, on the air side of it, the nonstop service is a challenge, and if you look at nationwide, you know, in my 42 years, the nonstop service between destinations, we still have a higher percentage because we do have the draw of tourism, conventions, the lake, the number of people who come here for the size of our community. The air service is better because of all the things we have to offer the people who want to travel here. And I think nonstop is obviously your top priority, but even promoting, if you can get here in one stop, that's a convenient connection that is not, you know, that you're not doing 3 or 4 stops and it's taking you all day to get from here back to Baltimore when I went to a conference and it was 2 stops, which every stop becomes a challenge on connection, on luggage, on just how long it takes you to do that connection, that there are, you know, there are highlights of stops that flights, and some flights, when they say when a direct flight is actually you get to stay on the same airplane. So, and that's kind of, people think direct, and direct means you could be on the airplane five legs. You could do 5 legs and be on the same flight number that gets you back to DC. And they say, well, it's direct. Well, because you don't get off the airplane. Nonstop is nonstop, but direct is, we've got a direct flight that goes through Dallas and right on to New Orleans or something. That's a huge bonus. If you don't have to change planes and your bag's there, that's another thing to promote and helps us add to air service when we can't get as many as we'd like. And looking at what we do have and how we can improve, you know, the lack of stops or the more direct flights that can connect people and get them here.
Yeah, that's a great comment. We have a map that has not only all of the direct flights, but also dots for the one-stop destination. So when Mike's going out with his convention groups who may have that perception, he utilizes that map and his marketing tools to let those attendees know that you may not have a nonstop from your city, but you may not have a nonstop, but you probably have one stop.
Couple things. One is under here, gaming destination. Recent potential visitors view gaming as a strength. I'm begging you for some influencers. I'm begging you.
We are working on it.
Please, gaming is to do with influencers. I've asked
Absolutely.
for 2 years. Okay, I mean, we were on a call yesterday for some on the RAS, I'm on the RAS committee, and we keep looking. And I said this, and I go, hey guys, you got a skier and a paddleboarder, but you know, gaming, in Northern Nevada, we gave away a $3 million jackpot. We're millionaire makers in Reno, Nevada. We make millions. So I would just appreciate, I think, Stephen, we really need some help here. And the second comment is, it says, recent visitors consider events to be a slight strength, potential visitors do not. I don't understand that. Does that mean that potential visitors don't want to come to the rib cook-off? What does it mean?
It means that they aren't as aware of our events. So I can pull up those numbers, but the recent visitors are more aware of how many events and festivals we have. The potential visitors are not as aware. Another side is the recent visitors. Most of the people who attend our events and festivals are Nevadans. And I think there is opportunity to highlight our events and festivals to bring more visitation in for some of those, for the balloon races where, I mean, I'm just using that as an example. A lot of it is local. How do we expand, get them more aware of the amazing events and festivals that we have?
And then last is, been on the air service for 20 years. It's always the same issue with air service, and it's about our population. And we had this talk with Charles and I know, or Carl the other day about, you know, we can shoot for the Atlanta arena. It's a home run, or the New York arena, but in realistic terms with pilot shortages and our population, as our population grows, air service will follow. We're just caught in an interesting time. And in fact, Christopher asked some great questions yesterday on their airport call about, hey, what are we doing incentive wise? We're trying to look at our incentives, and you know, then came back. We have a fund at the RSCVA because we're, you know, it's going to come back to us. We've got slight little issue out at the RSCVA, but it's gonna get solved. The point is that, you know, we gotta keep JetBlue in the game and we may have to do some mitigation, so we will need some money. But the point is, it's all about population. And we just gotta keep these airlines alive in Reno as best we can until we can get a breakthrough or we get to 1 million or whatever. You start seeing the kind of service that Vegas gives. I mean, Vegas, it's every day they got a new flight. So Christopher asked some great questions yesterday. It's time to maybe look at our policy of how we are, you know, getting these airlines to stay or to buy them or to entice them into this market because it's tough.
Mr. Harrison and Jessica, I'll call on you right after Charles finishes.
So great comments. Thank you for that. I want to point out that Mr. Swag and I had a talk when we were going out to that last conference. And I've asked Mr. Swag for some information that would help us in messaging specifically in and around the gaming, which helps us differentiate where we are. So I know he's searching that for us now, but that is a priority. It's still one of our three-legged pieces that helps differentiate outdoors, special events, and gaming. So we're working with Mr. Esquadra right now to help message that for future that then rolls back into our marketing. So it's a great point, and we are pushing forward with some content over there on that.
Just to briefly add a little color, and Rick very in tune with this, and Shannon, as we all know, well, we all don't know in this room, and this is one of the. But Northern Nevada is if you're just like, this is where, and I think you agree too, Christian, it's like the bucket list family with the influencers. There's a whole world, right, of gaming influencers that will sit with a TikTok watching playing video poker and or out, can't get my head around it at times, but people love it. But one of the things I was sharing with Charles is, and we all know this in the game side, that the Northern Nevada market, if you are into it, if you are into gaming, is probably one of the greatest values from time on device, whole percentages, blackjack rules, what are liberal, what, now again, if you're not in that world, it doesn't mean anything. But that's the beauty of this with social media, is to be able to drill and just talk to that group. The tough part is, and this is where the challenge, everybody can sell themselves as the best gaming value. We actually do have backup with the gaming control, Nevada Gaming Commission, showing percentages. I mean, but it's not an easy, if you're explaining it to that depth, we got to figure out a way of really being able to present that to the user. But I do think there's a niche out there that will truly travel for your gaming, for your rules and your.
You gotta be careful, because there's certain ones of those gamblers who don't.
True.
No, what I challenge Mr. Swag is how to get that messaging and we can then convert that into the right content to use.
You guys have a great point, Stephen, and one other side of it is, when we were all locked down in COVID, I saw more people trying to learn how to gamble. In other words, especially, and I saw it more out, you know, regionally, because I saw it at the Tamarack, but what you saw were these young kids coming in and learning how to play, you know, some kind of an interblock game or but they were so bored, they couldn't get into movie theaters, they didn't have any sports there. So they came to gaming as, you know, gaming. So anyway, that's the point I'm making is there's gotta be something there.
Okay, let me go to Ms. Frasa and then Ms. Silver.
Yeah, and thank you, Anne, for bringing up the air service. I think a few things being the board rep on the airport is there's a couple things after COVID. I mean, shortage of aircraft, but also a big shortage of pilots. So it's becoming more challenging just even with the incentive program. And I think a lot of us remember the Reno Air Days. And that may be what it takes again with the RASC is looking at those innovative ways, whether it's charters. I mean, I don't know if the board knows this. I know some of you do, but the bowlers, for example, I mean, that's why JetBlue added more flights to service, just so they could service all the bowlers coming into our region. So getting back to what Rick said, that component's very important. And Mr. Squaggy, you remember the Safari Club when everyone worked together to get air service to come here to bring in those conventions. So it does work when people get together, but it's probably something I think, as Rick said too, the population. I mean, we're just not there yet with the population numbers we need. The other thing I was gonna say, to Christina, I think going back, Charles, I probably sound like a broken record, but that master plan, I think this information is so critical in this report that should be given whoever gets this RFP on the master plan. Because some of the data in this report, for example, festival grounds, we have a gamer who's just constructed new festival grounds. We've got gaming properties. I think all of our gaming properties in our region have spent significant dollars upgrading their rooms and other amenities. But the regions change too. We have new non-gaming hotels that are coming on. Reno's just different than it was Reno Sparks, Tahoe 4 years ago. So I think those amenities and getting them out there, it's just a different, I think that master plan is going to be critical as we move forward to have that template on those uses along our tourism corridors and those activities around, for example, our gaming properties, or Charles, I know you've been a big proponent of this, even our region around our convention center. What are those amenities around there? And that's come in every single report since the RSCVA does a strategic study. So at some point, I just think that master plan and what develops around our area, and that's key with our local government officials. So I don't know who can present this report. And I think Board Member Esquaga, you said this last meeting, the more, I think the top level, Christina, you did good with those metrics. I think having those presentations out there would be helpful to our locals who are making these land use policy decisions on their master planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Silver?
I just have a quick comment. I want to back up what Rick is talking about in terms of what I'll call gaming versus gambling. We used to be known for gambling, but I think there's a different connotation when we talk about gaming, particularly sports games, sports betting and all that, which is on the rise and is so popular among all age groups. And I think we should be highlighting that. We shouldn't back away from the old term of gambling that seemed offensive, like we're known for divorce and gambling. We should be known for a great place to game. And that's outdoor gaming, that's indoor gaming. I mean, that word is so different than gambling, because I appreciate the town is saying there's some gambling players you don't necessarily want to encourage to come here. But gaming is now universal, and sports gaming itself is just unbelievable in terms of the amount of money and time spent on wagering and sports itself. So I think we can talk about gaming in the data as meaning many things, including the slot machines and everything else.
And your potential gamers.
Yeah.
Your
yeah,
esports is gonna, it's
absolutely
the future. College could be real professional gamers.
It's not.
Gamers. Let me use that word, I like the word game.
Ms.
I'm
Kim?
trying to be sensitive. But I know, I definitely can respect the fact that that millennials are a big target for us because that's our future. So when I make this comment, I don't want to make you think that I don't believe that. But correct me if I'm wrong, the millennials goes up to 42. It's like, because I remember I'm like, thank goodness I just missed the millennial mark. But it's up to 42, right? It's like 27, 42 or something.
Yes.
Okay, all right, and then our potential visitor is age was, our average is 53, our target's 49, potential 47 is what I wrote from our notes last
Yes.
time. So I just want to caution that, like, if we're going from 27 to 42, but our potential visitor is 47, and I still feel like we do skew a little young in a lot of our branding. So, but I do also realize that's our future, so we can try to balance that out as much as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. Okay, are we good? Thank you, Christina, and for expanding on what we received last month, and the incredible data. Some of it's surprising, some of it not, but a good way for us to guide what we're doing as we look at marketing, sales, and our strategic plans. So I will go ahead and close item G1. go to item G2, discussion, possible action to approve the recommendation from the executive and legislative committee to commence discussions with Charles Harris, our RSCVA president and CEO, to extend the term of Mr. Harris's employment agreement. And I would go to chair of the executive and legislative committee, Ms. Gill.
Thank you. So I would actually like Ben, if you wouldn't mind, to start us off by taking us through like the policy of the process and the timeline, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, so just so everybody's on, the same page. Mr. Harris had a 3-year contract that runs through October 31st of this year. Per his contract, we're to commence renewal discussions no later than May 1st. And if we intend not to renew, we have to provide a notice by July 1st. Earlier this month, February 2nd, the committee, which is chaired by Ms. Keel, Ms. Silver, Chairwoman Bybee, and Commissioner Hartung are the members of that committee, were met and were tasked with answering 2 questions. The first being, should the RSCVA pursue discussions to renew Mr. Harris's contract? And number 2, if they want to pursue renewal, sort of what process does the committee recommend putting in place to do that? And I want to just make clear, we're not agendizing. The discussion at this point is not what are the renewal terms, or what should we pay, or how long the contract should be, what should the benefits be. Really, all we're doing today is saying, do we want to pursue renewal, and if so, what's the process? And at that committee meeting, and we have to remember, committees are all advisory to the board, so nothing the committee does is binding until the board approves it. At the committee level, the decision was made to make a recommendation to yes, pursue those renewal discussions, and to basically, through Ms. Keel as the chair of the committee, run those discussions through the committee. So Ms. Keel would sort of be the designated individual, have the discussion with Mr. Harris to see if we can, if there are terms that everybody can live with. If they get to that point, those terms would go back to the committee for review, and possible recommendation to the board. And then ultimately, I think the idea is the committee would bring a contract to the board for approval based on the terms that Ms. Keel and Mr. Harris through the committee were able to agree on. So with that, I will turn it back to you.
I just had a couple comments. One is I wanted to reassure the board, and this has been somewhat of a common practice in the past with contracts and like the goals and other executive committees, that everybody on the board, I will reach out to everyone individually prior to us coming in to being presented for you to be making a vote, right? So I would never expect you to walk into a board meeting and the committee has given a proposal and you're expected to make a vote and seeing the key items for the first time. That's not how it's been done in the past. I always appreciated when I believe Mr. Murdoch, Mr. Hornstein had called me and said, okay, here's what we're working on. Here's, and I was able to give my feedback. They took it back to the committee, and then I was prepared when I walked into a board meeting. So that would be my plan moving forward for this process. For full transparency, in addition, though, I do think it's important to point out that Ms. Silver, Ms. Raza, and myself will be coming out off the board, or potentially coming off the board in June for July. And that is in the middle, could be in the middle of this process. So we could renew early and not have it start until the end of his contract, which is October. But I think it's important for the board to know, for transparency, that 3 of the members and 2 that are on the subcommittee are coming off during this process, which could put a little wrench into this. However, I also think it's important that if 3 new people are coming on, you know, do we really want 3 new people who have never worked with our CEO to have to be forced to give an opinion on contracting renewals and stuff like that? So I'm not asking for any necessary decisions. I just wanted to kind of put those things out there so for the board to start thinking about that.
And I think the only thing that I would add is I had asked to start the discussions early, just to give us we wouldn't be pressed for time, not only the July 1st change in our, in the membership, but really to give us the time to, not feel pressured and to start early. So this is early. And as Ms. Kill said, she can decide, and then the subcommittee can, and ultimately the board will, contract, terms, and whether that is May 1st, or if we want it to simply, kick in when his other contract expires. We have full, and that'll be a decision that we need to make. But if people are going, well, why are we have till May 1st to make a decision, just felt this would give us a better, more relaxed pace to move at. No one's stressed on getting the work done, coming back to a subcommittee, and then giving the board the time to give Shannon input through the process before the subcommittee meets again. So that's kind of why we're a little bit early in the process with the goal of it being wrapped up. And like I said, it could be a contract that starts when his other contract ends, or it could be another date that's to be determined. And as Mr. Kennedy has reminded us today, the only things we have to decide on is just two things that the subcommittee did. Are we moving forward with contract negotiations? And the process that the subcommittee is bringing forward is, as in his original contract, one member, and was Mr. Cornstein chair of the committee at that time?
I was at the time, my brother died that day, and it was brought forward.
Okay, you were chair of the board, but of the subcommittee. Was Mr. Cornstein the subcommittee chair? Because I know
He was the point person that I spoke to the whole time.
But I know,
The original hire, you didn't go through a committee.
no, we didn't do, yeah.
Okay, so the subcommittee, the executive subcommittee was not involved. Last time.
Subcommittee, I believe, was for the goals and
Goals.
performance
Yeah, okay.
evaluation.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then
Which is separate.
maybe talk about, explain,
okay.
Councilwoman,
Okay.
about sort of your committees, because I don't know if they've been like outlined who's on them, what they do. And I think that would be really helpful because it's just a little bit different process, and I want to be very careful that we don't do something in a committee and then the rest of the board doesn't feel like they're participating. Not just on this process, other process. Like, one of the things I think, again, RSCVA does it, we should all be at the table on the marketing aspects of what we do. It's super, super important. So that's some of those things I feel like maybe it's a board, you guys talked about today, you guys went to this conference and talked about, participating with the board, and when you're having these committees, they can tend to be somewhat siloed, because no one's reached out to me and asked me, what committee do you want to be on? What do you want to do? You know what I mean? So I don't know how we're selecting these committees, what they look like, but they feel a little siloed. And so I would just recommend, maybe you can give us a little background in your process of doing that.
Well, in each subcommittee, some of those subcommittees were already previous chair, already put people on those. So I only had a couple of, when I became chair, I only had a couple of positions I needed to fill. So there were members on subcommittees, finance, the marketing was new. So the special events committee was a new committee, the executive legislative, finance, I think Andy, you moved off, executive went over to finance to chair it. So we had some shifting, but there were some already there, always in front of that chair. But do you want like,
I just don't understand.
do you want what the,
I asked the same thing actually last month, I believe you emailed over, because I was confused as well as on who was on what committee.
Do we
So
have-
maybe if that went out.
Yeah.
Lisa has it, it's appointed by the chair and.
okay, but let's define, and maybe that would be a really good, good thing to spell out.
I know, I feel like I miss
Under
meetings,
executive and
like, you know what I mean? Like, I always feel like I feel like I'm missing meetings, but we're not missing meetings, but it feels like we're, it's somewhat disconnected.
Well, and the subcommittees, when they meet, the purpose, my understanding, and Mr. Hershey can correct me if I'm wrong, or some of you who've been here longer, was the subcommittee work is to, a lot of times, do the legwork on whether it's special events, or we met for the new special events committee with our outside community members, did all the work and then brought it to the board. So and there are subcommittees that are very common in most organizations, that you have subcommittee that does a lot of the legwork and brings, so clarification on the roles. Yeah, we can, yeah, absolutely. Because executive legislative is obviously anything executive, which was the process for, evaluation, CEO evaluation, the surveys, all of that came under, and then it / legislative, so our subcommittee is also looking at legislative affairs. Finance is pretty self-explanatory in what it does, but I think, yeah, having that spelled out would be great. And I do appreciate Shannon, really reaching out to, because this is contract negotiation is a big deal. And I think her willingness and I guess Don did that last time for you, that reached out to all of you, had an opportunity to talk to her. Because she's doing the negotiating and bringing it back to the subcommittee with input from all of you.
It was on those subcommittees, because I don't know.
Oh, we have a list of them. Can we get that out? Yeah, Lisa, can you get that out to everybody? And I we said that. Ms. Rosa.
Yeah, I just, if I could, because I've got to sign off, because I think we were set 2 hours for the meeting, but I can't support this. I'm not trying to be contentious, but 5 of us, and I said this during the when we did the bonus and the merit increase, I think some of us were quoted in the paper too. The majority of this board wasn't here for the original contract. 5 out of the 9 members were new. And so for me, we don't even have the contract as part of our agenda. I just think, you know, we've had this great presentation today about board governance. I also agree this isn't a silo to have the subcommittee do this. I think this is one of the more highest paid contracts in the state. If you look at Transparent Nevada, and I just think it would be beneficial for the entire board to be weighing in at a public meeting. I just don't feel comfortable. I don't know how the committee again was selected, what board members were going to be on it. But I do think there's a lot of things, and Charles, this isn't directed to you at all. I think you know my position, but I wasn't here for that original contract. And there's things, quite frankly, that I wouldn't have voted for in that contract. That being said, we had a contract that we had to live by, but I do not feel comfortable personally delegating this to the subcommittee. So I just wanted to put that on the record, and I do have to sign off. I'm not trying to be contentious, but I just feel uncomfortable with that. And quite frankly, I'd like to hear from all the board members at a public meeting on their thoughts, because you guys can convince me of things. And I'd like to have that board dialogue with the different points of view, particularly since this is our one employee in the organization that we have a say on. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cross. And Mr. Squaggett.
And I was all going to give kind of a opposite view and total respect of member Saraz. I think she brings up good points, but I do think, I'll back up. I also would like, I think sharing out the information of each committee, who's serving what role, what their function is, we need to have that. I know I'm not familiar with each.
Yeah.
I believe on this committee is Ms. Keel, Commissioner Hartung, yourself, Chairwoman, and then Ms. Silver, which I'm good with. I like the role of being able to take some of these tasks, start them in the committee level, because they're really broad discussions. I believe the committee meetings are public.
Yeah.
Which I feel still shows there's the transparency there, but and again, totally outside of whether it's Charles in the seat or anybody, I do had trouble with agreeing to the last contract. It's kind of handed to you, and that's never going to change, right? We're gonna have new members coming on. I get that, but I do think starting it at a committee level, Ms. Keel has shared that she's going to come back individually with the board members. I'm good in supporting that. I think we do, from a board governance side, these committees are where we can really affect some change and get some work done versus bringing it to the full group. For the first case, I think on the final sign off, absolutely, the full board needs to weigh in, and there's got to be a lot of discussion, but for the sake of just moving the discussion and getting it going, I'm in in favor of putting it to this committee, so that's.
Okay, just one down. Did you have your hand up? No. Yes,
Well, I
and you
will,
looked like you were.
I'm just gonna, move a motion to accept the committee recommendation as stated in item 42.
Okay. So I have a motion to accept the recommendation, which would be, that stated, do I need to see? Okay, so simply moving through with, starting contract negotiations with the chair, through the subcommittee coming to the board, with the board being apprised along the way by the chair of that subcommittee. Okay, I have a motion and I second this. Okay, I have a motion and a second discussion, Mr. Murdoch.
No, discussion.
I understand Jessica, she's never seen the contract. So my point is, when does she see the contract? And does she have to wait until the committee comes back? So I guess where I'm going with that is, I don't know that Vaughn's seen the contract, or he might have because he's obviously on your committee. Sorry. I'm just saying for all that transcript, that we need to make sure every board member has read the contract. Don't you think?
So the contract's public record, I set it out.
Yeah, just so that everybody is at it.
And it's, so you're talking about the current contract. It's
Yeah,
not
so
the-
they know, yeah, and.
It's a framework.
That's why all the basic terms, the highlights of all the terms, there's like 5 or 6 of them. I mean, we could even send that around and make it easier. for
And it
people.
was done before even I was back on the board.
Yeah, and I wasn't here.
So there is some discussion, there are some points I'd like to talk about in the contract, I think. Back to the committee or however we're gonna do it, but I would have some questions. So anyway,
Okay,
that's all.
okay. Thank you.
Transparency.
KFC?
Yeah, couple things. I do think we should have an attorney-client at some point. When we're talking about this, I think it's good to kind of get a legal side of things. And I'll tell you why I'm totally comfortable with you guys in the subcommittee, kind of like putting it all together and then bringing it back. That's not an issue for me. I'm gonna bring up something that was an issue for me from the very beginning before. I even knew Charles, and Ben probably remembers this very, very well. I was not supportive of this contract at all by Surfway. And you knew, Ben, I had significant concerns about that. I expressed it to Ann, to you. I was not ready to come forward to the board and present the contract in any shape or form. But due to a family tragedy, I couldn't be there, and Ornstein took the ball and ran with it. And so with that being said, I will be voting no.
Okay, Mr. Kennedy, would you like to?
Yeah, so there's a couple things I want to put on record. So the attorney client, because he's the CEO, we actually can't do that, or all our important issues with the CEO.
That's it. Oh, and I met with Molly too, because isn't Molly like our,
She is, but an attorney client, like a non-meeting with the board is not, it's not allowed in the context of Mr. Harris's employment issues and contracts. So everything's got to be in an open meeting. And then I also just want to put on the record, I
well,
know.
I think you could open yourself up for liability if you're gonna talk about certain dynamics.
Yeah, but per statute, we have no avenue to have a board meeting, a closed board meeting to discuss Mr. Harris's contract.
Okay,
We can't do that. That's not.
okay, well then I'll bring it to the board.
And we can bring it to the board, and I also just want, sure, and I also just want to put on the record, as we talked about, Ms. Keel reaching out to everybody, and just for anybody watching, just to acknowledge that, you know, we are subject to open meeting law. There are issues with walking quorums. I'm aware of those. I'll talk to Ms. Keel, and I'll make sure we have procedures in place to allow her to get input from the board, but that we're also being conscious of walking quorums, and that we don't cross any lines there. But put that on the record for anybody that's watching.
Okay. Ms. Silver.
Chair, I just want to put something on the record. I was on the board at the time of the negotiations with Mr. Harris, and I was never contacted by anyone. So I think, you know, we have to do a better job of ensuring that we are all included. I'm not making comment about his contract one way or the other, but no one contacted me. I was just told we now have a contract. So I think it's very valuable to have committees based on what Mr. Schwaga said. I think we start the process And then in the spirit of full transparency, accountability and participation, that really is a board discussion. We're just doing the legwork to begin with, that's all.
Yeah, and I will, you know, I would agree with you entirely, and really by, Ms. Keel making the commitment, make sure she hears from all of you. So as you get into the terms, today we're not talking about terms, but as we get into what those terms are, that she's getting input from all 9 board members, well, 8 plus her. I think is important, and Mr. Kennedy to keep us on track from the legal perspective that we're doing that and not violating any open meeting laws. So I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
No.
Opposed?
No.
No. Okay, I have 2 no's.
that down?
3, 4, 6. Is that right, Trevor? Is that right? Lisa, my clerk, okay. So 6, please. Okay, 6-2 with, member Hartson absent. And then he apologized, let me know ahead of time, he couldn't be at the meeting today, for family reasons. So, we will see him next month. So we'll close out that item. Move on to item H, if there are any announcements, reports, updates. The bowling or VIP reception, I hope most of you can attend on March 11th. Lisa sent that out, and I think the USBC sent that also, so to make sure that we're there. I think it'd be awesome to be there and support the bowlers and the USBC that first night. So if you can be there March 11th at the bowling center, that'd be awesome. Mr. Murdoch?
Comment is that we need to make sure that the airport and everybody is welcoming USBC to town, make them feel special. Because we're good at it, and I know they're gonna be everywhere. So hopefully we have a great PR campaign and to let everybody, including, the businesses local, take a shot at it.
Yeah.
Have your bowler special, that you doing that, I hope.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Okay.
One question.
Is it multi-year or 1 year? The bowling?
The bowling
3
is,
3 years.
it's actually,
Four consecutive.
it's through 2032. There's 7 out of 10 years in that 2032 range. From where we are now to 2032, there's 7 events that will take place.
But 4 consecutive.
4 consecutive.
Got it.
That's where I got the $2 million, $200 million impact on the,
Okay.
and for the record, Shannon, you're calling me on, thank you for the call on it.
Okay. Moving on to item 9, comments from the public. Any public comments?
Yeah, I'd like to make one. It's not really under public comment. First of all, I want to say thank you, Councilwoman, for allowing us to have monthly meetings. I mean, it clearly, we got a lot of business to go over, so I think it's gonna be incredibly beneficial. I don't think we lack any content whatsoever. So thank you for that. I think it's very, very helpful. The other thing is, I will say, when are we gonna, I asked for this, I think a couple of board meetings, having Brent. Brent?
Yeah, he's coming down.
Okay.
We
'cause I
scheduled him. We scheduled him.
And I waited for him to get hired for about 8 years. So like,
We're excited
he's
for him
been
to be
on like
here.
4 months, I think now, and we want to hear what his marketing presentation is, what his plans are, and just some of the crossover. So
Yeah.
I thought we were gonna have that on.
Well, we do. He was already scheduled for our March meeting before we knew we had a February meeting. And so with the bowling being here too, but the timing still remained better for him to be here in March. And he'll talk about the bowling because it's already started, but we want kind of long range strategic. We want to see what he's doing.
Okay,
What-
as long as you have a plan.
What
Okay.
in the next year, what are his plans, and give us an understanding of what he's doing. So yes, he will be here at our next meeting. Okay, hearing no further, I will adjourn.